This presentation is called, do not allow others to control your access to information and opportunities. But a better name for it could also be, why you shouldn't rely on recruiters, job sites, and sort of other people, when you're doing your, search for a position. And this, despite the title of this presentation, it's an extremely important one. I mean, it may not sound that interesting, but if you understand what this is about, it's really going to make a major difference in your career. So I've been in the legal placement business for about over 20 years, and in October of 2000, there was a massive crash in the legal market, and what had happened is there was there'd been a lot of money that had gone into a lot of internet startups, and that financing suddenly went away because the markets realized that they were putting money into things that were unproven business models, and in many cases, companies that hadn't even generating revenue were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And so when the startups of those companies, there was all sorts of work being done, and generated. And when that work went away, law firms, lost a ton of legal work that they'd kind of built up, and they stopped hiring attorneys, and they started really laying them off en masse. And the worst affected were the corporate attorneys, but there'd been so much business and stuff that was coming out of the internet companies that it really did a lot of damage to law firms. And there were tons and tons of layoffs all over the country, and in New York, and lots of people lost their jobs, and starting classes didn't weren't started, so they canceled their summer classes, they canceled their summer associate programs for the next year. It was really bad, and a lot of people may not remember it, but in some extent it's similar to what happens when there's a pandemic, like you've seen. So so it was very bad. And and I started speaking with all these attorneys that were having all these kind of sad stories, and I found it very distressing. I mean, people were moving back in with their parents, giving up on their legal careers, and I hired several people actually in my office to be recruiters that had lost their jobs, and that I'd known from when I was practicing. So at BCG, what I had done, is the company had started in the late 1999, or around then, and I had a massive database of law firms that I'd spent over a year developing. And just in Los Angeles, there were over 2,500 law firms that I'd identified to use in terms of that had different practice areas. And you should understand that every legal market in the country, whether it's Los Angeles or New York or Chicago or Philadelphia, I mean, all big cities have thousands of law firms, and people don't see that, and they think of certain large law firms, and they think that that's all there is. But honestly, I mean, there may be high-paying major law firms, but there's also a lot of smaller law firms that are breaking off from those large law firms all over the country on a daily basis, and then they're paying the associates that they bring with them, and they hire high market rates as well. So it's very important that you understand that the market is huge, and the number of opportunities out there are huge, but all you're seeing, many attorneys are seeing, are the well-branded law firms. And so what happened to me was I realized when all these people were losing jobs that something about only about 20 of these 2,500 law firms were clients of the recruiting firm. And maybe it was a little bit more, I mean, after a year, but it wasn't very large. So if you think of 20, I mean, 1% of 2,500 law firms is about 20, 25 law firms. So literally a recruiting firm is representing the biggest firms, some in the city, and this was the company at the time. We obviously are much different now, but that's 1%, and that's pretty much what you get when you talk to most recruiting firms. Is they have unless they're a large kind of national firm, they have a very limited number of places that they can send you to. So you have to think about what this meant. So all these people were coming to me begging for jobs, and I needing a placement. And, and out of the, those 2,500 law firms just in Los Angeles, and then it's all over the country, I could only help them with maybe 20. So what happens when you go to most recruiting firms is if they don't have jobs at whatever that limited number of people that they represent, they can't help you. And it's very important to understand that, if you're using recruiters or a lot of methods to search jobs, you're really getting a limited, understanding of the market. So, 2 decades later, this company has over 150 employees, and, and that number in Los Angeles is probably close to 800 or 1,000 law firms or something like that. So, we're getting a lot more. But at the same time, that was kind of the result, is people were I was only able to help them with those 20 firms. And because those 20 firms didn't have jobs, people that came to me were out of luck, and that made me feel very bad. So, so what happened is, those firms would be absent from the search, and, and that obviously wasn't a good thing. So you have to think about it also. New York's even larger. I mean, there may be 4,000, and firms. And the thing I understood kind of instinctively was, even though all these law firms were laying people off, the firms where most of the activity was happening were in the large law firms. And I knew that, that with all these law firms in every city, there had to be, opportunities. I mean, it's impossible that that just because work stops in large law firms that, and people are laying people off, that no one else is hiring. And, when you're looking for, an opportunity in the market, lots of attorneys will look around and they'll see kind of that, that there's not jobs, or when they talk to people, they are recruiters and other people, they get very discouraging news, and they conclude that, wow, this market's bad, I can't find any position. And that, in my opinion, as I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, is absolutely insane, because in every single market, there's always lots and lots of opportunities. There are opportunities right now. And knowing what I know now, our company is, making placements almost every day, and getting interviews, several interviews a day, because it doesn't matter what the market's like. And right now happens to be a bad market, the worst it's ever been probably. But we're still getting lots and lots of interviews, because we realize that, business is still going on in a lot of small firms and a lot of medium firms, and even in large firms in certain practice areas. So concluding that there's not a lot of opportunities is really a very, very, horrible mistake. And lots of people end up making that mistake in their search and in their careers, because they're talking to the wrong people, and they're using the wrong sources to try to find positions, and kind of the sense they're getting of the market. So, what you need to do, the greatest danger that you're going to face when you're looking for a job is believing, that there's not positions out there, and allowing others to kind of influence what you think and what you believe, because most attorneys and other people will only apply to a limited number of places and have access to a limited number of opportunities, because they really they don't understand the number of opportunities out there. And just so you kind of get a sense of the way the market works, what happens in every large recession, or any kind of changing market, is work will move from larger firms to smaller and medium-sized firms where the billing rates are lower. And so those firms will start hiring a lot of people. And in addition, that work will also move to markets, larger markets. The work will move from larger markets to smaller markets. So there'll be opportunities there. So every time something bad happens and the market gets bad, there's always going to be opportunities in different types of firms. And firms with higher overhead, which are larger firms, typically have to keep paying that overhead. They have pensions sometimes, and all sorts of things that they're paying. And so it's much harder for them to start rehiring when the economy's bad. So you can't, listen, to other people many times in your job search. I mean, what I'm going to try to, stress to you and explain to you today is, how to find information that's out there, where to look and find information about jobs, and then how to really know what's going on. And, when an attorney is in law school, it's a perfect example. They may only be exposed to the firms that are doing on-campus interviews at their school. And, an example would be like, if you go to school, say in Michigan, and say you go to a local law school in Michigan, I don't know, Wayne State, which is it's a good law school. And I know people that have gone there, but, what's going to happen is you're going to be exposed to, law firms that are local to Detroit and Michigan, and that like the school and have alumni that went there, and you're going to be exposed to, on campus, and they're going to have relationships with those firms. And so you're going to literally be limited to, whatever is going on in kind of the Detroit, geographic area, maybe some, areas outside of there. But, in reality, if you have done well there, or you have a specialized skill, like maybe you have science background and you could be a patent attorney and all sorts of things, the whole country is open to you. So, and maybe the Detroit economy is depressed when you're looking for jobs. I mean, and so they're literally the whole country's open, and it's an ABA approved law school, and there's all sorts of things you can do, but you may conclude that the market's bad based on what you're seeing in Detroit. And you really need to, understand that, the conducting extensive searches and understanding kind of all, what the market's like out there is crazy. And in Michigan, for example, you may go to University of Michigan, and in that case, all sorts of, national places are applying, but still you may only be exposed to the largest employers and not the smaller ones. So the idea of any type of search and finding information is to know where the opportunities are and how to go after them. So I want to tell you a quick story, and I'm going to tell you several stories today about to kind of make this point. But a few years ago, I was working with a graduate of a top probably 3 law school, and he was fired from a position, and he lost his job because he felt that I think he was right based on what he told me, that his law firm had been overbilling a client, and they were asking him to do unnecessary work. I guess there was a solution to a problem. He found it very quickly, but they kept asking him to look at something that was unrelated, and basically to drive up the bill. And he confronted the attorney with it, and they decided that this person wouldn't play the game, and he lost his job. And that's one thing too about working in a law firm, whether you're regardless of your level. Most law firms, if you don't have business, they want you to be a soldier and just do kind of what you're told and not question it. And so that's a piece of job search advice. You have to, unless something completely unethical is happening, I mean, you really have to let the law firm make the decisions, or the employer, regardless of what kind of employer, about what you're doing. So this recruiter, or this attorney, ended up calling attorneys all over, he ended up calling attorneys all over, or recruiters all over Washington, D.C. And every single one of those recruiters told him that they didn't have any openings. He was only, 6 months out of law school. He didn't have any, formal experience, and he was, he felt terrible. And, he had very limited amount of experience and very confused. And, the fact is that, most law firms are not actually seeking attorneys with only 6 months of experience. So recruiters were all telling him that he was out of luck. And despite the fact that there are thousands of law firms in Washington, D.C., he really had no way of, getting a position, and was very discouraged by what he was hearing. So I told this attorney that I didn't see any issues with him getting a position, but I would need to look at a lot of law firms for him. And I told him that, we had to shop his candidacy around, and we had to find, places where, where he could apply that didn't have openings, but that would value, his law school and the limited amount of experience he had. I put together a list of probably, over 50 law firms, and I went out and I marketed to them. And within a few weeks, I got him a position in several interviews. And the interview I got him and the job was probably the top law firm for the type of work he did in Washington, D.C. So, he ended up getting a really good position. And, before he found me, he was actually, thinking about giving up on the practice of law. And and very, very discouraged. And so the idea here was he was listening to recruiters telling him they didn't have any opportunities. He was discouraged, thinking about giving up on the practice law because he was fired 6 months into his practice. And by looking at a lot of firms that didn't have openings for an attorney with 6 months, he was able to get into one of the best law firms in Washington, D.C. And other recruiters would not talked to him and told him they couldn't help him because they were under the belief that anybody with 6 months of experience can't get a job. And I just might as well tell you right now, because it is important. At BCG we get people with no experience jobs and offers. We get all sorts of people because the market is fluid. I mean, there's always someone that's going to be interested in you and want to hire you. So back to, what happened in 2000. So the legions of, laid off and, people started, kind of piling up around me. And I saw, so many people were calling. It was literally like you'd hang down the phone, there'd be another call, another call, another call. And we had, maybe just a few recruiters in the office. And so what happened is I decided that the only way to get these attorneys jobs was if I was able to go and build, list of these firms for these attorneys and help them contact, these people. And so what I did is I invited everybody, into my office that was looking for a job. And I ended up, helping them send out their resumes to, most all the firms in each city they wanted to work in that had firms in their matching practice area, and told them it was the best way for them to get a position. And it actually, worked very well. And people were able to almost, all those people that contacted lots and lots of firms got positions. It didn't matter what practice area they were in, even though corporate was in bad shape. It didn't matter what law school they went to. If they went to a third or fourth year law school, that didn't matter. Everybody got positions. And something you need to understand is that the legal market is a market, and there's always going to be someone who's interested in hiring you and giving you opportunities because law firms need people in order to make money. And different law firms have different amount of work. Different companies have different amount of work. Those mailings that we did were not just to law firms. We also did them to, companies and government offices. And but the idea is if you know how to market yourself and you just get out there and market yourself, you're going to get lots and lots of interviews and offers. Everybody that ever does this does, and it's extremely important. So, what I saw when this happened was a really cool thing. I mean, people that had been, formerly depressed and sad about their prospects, became empowered. And, they'd tried all these other methods to get jobs. They'd network, they'd use Jobsites, they'd use recruiters, they'd done everything that they could. And suddenly their lives had been changed by contacting tons and tons of employers that didn't even have openings. So, it made a huge and a major, major difference. And, there's nothing more dangerous to your success as an attorney than limiting the number of opportunities that are out there. I mean, you need to understand, and have access to everything that's out there. And the only way that you can do that is by proactively, marketing yourself and learning how to do that. In every economy, there's lots and lots of busy law firms. The largest law firms, are not always busy. Sometimes they are, but, if the economy is terrible, what happens generally is, things like litigation will pick up. Corporate work will go to, a lot of smaller firms. And even in bad economies, what happens is companies that are having issues may have to sell or merge or issue debt. I mean, you probably, in a bad economy, you'll see headlines every single day about this company raised this amount of money, this company took a loan for this amount of money. And what's happening is that there are attorneys doing that work. In many cases, the law firms want to save money, but and give it to other people. But at the same time, the companies want to save money and give it to smaller law firms. But the work does move to smaller law firms, and it does move to smaller markets many times, but not always. But the point is that there's always going to be work, and depending on the market, regardless. Now, one thing that's also important to understand is that most people that are looking for jobs, they seem to believe that the law firms are going to be able to put their jobs out there. Companies will always put their jobs out there if they have the work, and those are the only places that they should be looking for. And it's very important to understand that with thousands of law firms in most major cities, law firms, not all of those law firms, the majority of them don't have in-house recruiting departments. And they're not going to spend a lot of time looking for attorneys even when they need them. Their expertise is in practicing law. It's not in recruiting. And an attorney that's billing out at $750 an hour may be consider themselves too busy to even look at resumes or to post ads online or to call recruiters looking for people. I mean, they're in the middle of very stressful cases that are work or transactions that are consuming their time and that are bringing in revenue to the firms. And the last thing in the world they want to do is worry about recruiting. But the thing is law firms have so much work coming in that they often don't take the work they have because they don't have the people. So they may have work that they could do, but they just aren't doing it. I mean, they're just, it's going undone. And, so what I realized, that, when I did all this work is I extended, also, if you think about the number of companies also in a market, there's typically, 3 times as many companies that hire attorneys as there are, companies that, hire, law firms that hire attorneys. So, they may not hire as many attorneys, but there's that many, there's that many more. So there's huge numbers of government offices, nonprofits, public interest organizations, and other people that also hire attorneys. And, the list of people that need attorneys to work for them is absolutely, huge. I mean, it's practically endless. And, I just, when I'm out, regardless of where I am, I could be at the beach or who knows. I mean, I meet people that need attorneys to work for them on an ongoing basis. Company owners, very wealthy people with, home offices, people running, small businesses. Lots and lots of people, need attorneys, and they need them on an ongoing basis. So with so many, people interested in, hiring you, you have to wonder why most attorneys only, get one job when they're looking for, or law students hardly most of them don't get a lot of jobs. You have to wonder why it's difficult to find jobs for most people, and why a search can take a long time. Because, the thing you need to understand that when you're looking for a job is there's all sorts of people that can hold you back from actually getting the jobs you want. And, job sites are going to control the flow of information to you, which I'll tell you about, in a little bit. But, the main thing to understand about job sites is job sites are only showing you jobs that the employers are paying to post there. So, that's a very limited number of employers. That means that, and I'm going to show you today, I'll also show you kind of a list of, how many job sites there are where there's job postings. But I mean, the number is just, huge. I mean, it's absolutely, loony how many job sites. I mean, there's thousands of them. I mean, at Law Crossing, we look at over 4,000 job sites to find attorney jobs. And just think about that, 4,000 job sites have attorney jobs on them. I mean, first of all, you don't have the time to look at all those. But, the reason there's 4,000 is because there's 4,000 different businesses out there trying to get employers to pay to post jobs. And so, most employers aren't going to post their jobs on 4,000 job sites. They may post them on one or two, but, they're not always posting jobs. They're just, a lot of times they'll just post them on their own website. Recruiters are controlling the flow of information to you. Recruiters have to have a relationship with a law firm in order for them to, send you there. So that to some extent may limit the number of law firms you end up looking at. If you network, the strength of your network is going to control the flow of information to you. I did a presentation, last week about networking and how important it is. But something to understand about networking is that, your ability to get information is dependent on how large and how significant your network is. And so you absolutely need to, do whatever you can to, control, to have, a large network. But if you don't, then that's going to hurt you. Another thing that controls, your information for you is, rumors and speculation among peers and others. I mean, they're going to control the flow of information to you. So you may simply believe that the market's very, very bad, and and not go out and seek information because you believe that the market's bad. And that's bad. I mean, organizations will control the flow of information to you. There may be jobs, where you're working, or you may have, you just don't know. So, your relationship with various organizations. And I'm not saying you should go about this being paranoid, but what I am saying is there's lots and lots of information out there. It's just that you don't have access to all of it. And, my advice in terms of the best way to get it is, to contact employers, obviously, and with, mass mailing and other targeted methods to find that information. But you're just not going to get, if you're using a job site to run your search, you're not going to get all the information. If we're using most recruiting firms, they're not legal placement firms. BCG is a legal placement firm, but most recruiting firms only have a limited number of relationships, and that's controlling the flow of information. So you need to always be aware that, you need to be very, very careful in terms of the amount of information you're looking at. Job sites are only showing you the jobs that employers are willing to pay hundreds of dollars. And, and so you just need to, really understand that, and, where that information is coming from. And same thing with recruiters, that's going to limit things. And, and most recruiters will only work with large law firms. I mean, I hate to say it, but it also takes a lot of work. So, in order for us at BCG, for example, to have as many opportunities we have, I mean, it takes over 150 people to find that information. That's a lot of organization. It's a lot of expense. It's a lot of, research, and it's the ability to even do that research, which I have since I'm an attorney and the people working here are, but not everybody wants to put in that sort of effort. And like I said earlier, your network's going to control the flow of information, and you may not have the time to have developed a good network. So, that's an important thing. And, and in terms of your network, networks are kind of an interesting thing, but, many networks will kind of, people in your network may or tell you about the information, or they may not, so you have to, build up goodwill sometimes to get into information about opportunities. And, like I said earlier, many times rumors and speculation are also going to control the flow of information to you. And this belief is going to, severely limit the number of opportunities you have. I mean, many people, have, are very, kind of closed off, and they get psyched out, and, they're impressionable, and most of us are to some extent. But, if you surround yourself with people that are thinking negatively about the market, that's going to have a negative impact on you. You have to understand kind of the power also of information. I mean, information is extremely important. So if you look at organizations like Facebook, Google, and LinkedIn, I mean, the reason that they're so powerful is because they control information. I mean, Facebook stands in the middle. It controls how you communicate with your friends, groups, and others, and it becomes an advertiser-sponsored event. The same thing with Google. I mean, Google controls the sort of information, and the same thing with LinkedIn. I mean, and if those organizations don't like you, or they don't like the kind of information you're putting out, or you don't do, whatever, I mean, they will ban sites. Google will ban sites from its platform, and Facebook will, ban people, and there's just all sorts of, things about information. So it's important to understand that, if you're relying on others for information, you're never going to have access to all of the opportunities. And you need to really understand, where, that information is, how to find it, and how to go after it. And, and just really realizing that no matter where you are. I mean, consider the story I told you earlier about, a student at Wayne State and just being limited by what's going on in that market. It's not that the school's doing anything wrong, but it's just that's how, most people end up conducting their searches. So I want to tell you kind of a funny personal story, and it's somewhat related to this, but it really relates to getting access to information and understanding, once you do get access to that information, what that information will mean and how it can change how you see yourself. So, not too long ago, I was speaking with a partner who is in a major law firm in Texas, and it was about potentially moving firms and that sort of thing. And he'd been in an unhappy marriage for some time, and mentioned that to me, and I mentioned that I was also going through a divorce. And back when I was growing up, at least, or people tended to get married very young, and especially in Texas. And he got married at the age of 19, and had never been exposed to really dating sites or other ways to find people, except I think he met his wife when he was in freshman in college or something. And I'd pretty much been have been single since I was never been single since I was about 19 years old either. So he told me he'd been very depressed when this divorce had started, and believed that it was going to be tough for him to meet people, that he didn't have a lot of time to get out and network. He wasn't in school anymore, and he'd been in this kind of unhappy relationship where he'd been just talked to very negatively for a few decades, and made to feel that he was undesirable and not a good person, didn't make enough money, and worked too much, and and just all these kind of criticisms that he received, and it made him feel very upset about himself and depressed, and he didn't really know what he was going to do, but he didn't think he had as much worth as he really did have. And that's the thing too, when you're not getting positive feedback from the legal market, when you're applying to jobs and so forth, you may believe that you don't have enough worth, but the point is you may be going about things in the wrong way. And this particular guy was living in a suburb outside of Dallas, I believe, and certainly didn't have a large network of people and wasn't meeting people, and really thought he would be single for a long time. And he thought that maybe he would, be meeting people through his church or friends, but it, could take a while, and he just didn't know. So someone he knew or he met through somewhere told him that maybe he should look at some dating sites, and he did. He joined a few, and I guess one was particularly good. I don't remember what it was, but within a few weeks, he started realizing that that there were just tons and tons of people that were interested in him, and he started going out on all these dates, and there were so many, he was going out on so many dates, and people were proactively contacting him that, he started finding reasons not to go out with people, and just eliminate them because he had so much people so interested in him. And the more he got to know people and the more he saw that there were people out there in the market, the more he realized that he was, worthwhile, that he was someone that, people liked and could like. And he also realized that, he got married very young and had never really been that compatible with his wife. And that, he actually had access to countless opportunities to find someone and be happy with them. And so it actually changed his whole kind of outlook. He became, instead of depressed and, like feeling, bad about himself, he became very happy, and he realized he had value, and he didn't have to tolerate being treated poorly or taken for granted or, feeling sorry for himself. And having access to all this information about people that were interested in him personally, made him feel very good. So I work, in other countries, and so I, as well as the U.S. And so I was going to India on a trip for work, and I was in the middle of a divorce, and he told me the story a day before I got on a plane. So I was in an airport, just kind of in a lounge waiting, and on my laptop, and didn't really know what to do. And and I was checking email, and I got an email from, I thought of him. So I downloaded a dating app out of curiosity, and then I uploaded a picture and wrote a little bit, and and then I forgot about it. Literally, I got on my plane like half hour later, and got on this 15-hour flight to Dubai, where I was landing for a 2-day stopover. So I got off in Dubai, and it was, I don't know, it was early in the morning there, and I turned on my phone, and or no, it was late. It was about 10 o'clock, and and I hadn't been there for more than 30 minutes, and I started getting all these messages, like from people that were based there as flight stewardesses and all sorts of things. Like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I could, if I wanted to, I would have been able to meet someone in Dubai. There was something called geo-targeting, I think, on the dating sites or not. And I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I think I must have received like, 25, messages, within 30 minutes, and I guess, I mean, must be a real active dating scene there in Dubai, which I certainly never would have thought. But, but had I been, living in Dubai, I probably would have, decided, the best way for me to meet people would be to join some organizations. Maybe I would have joined a tennis club or, a gym, and, and maybe some, business, like legal organizations, and gone to events, and made friends with, most likely made friends with males, and then met people through them. I mean, and it would have taken months to meet so many people. And the people that I met would have been very limited. It would have been a very limited pool, and it might not have been someone that I was actually compatible with. I mean, if I joined a legal organization of attorneys from the U.S. and Dubai, there might have been 3 or 4 eligible women that I would have. I mean, it's just, and I would have had to rely on the organization's schedule, and I would have had to join several organizations, and I never have met people. It could have taken me years. I mean, so if you think about that, I never really would have met people. I never would have realized how much value I had, and it would have been kind of not a great thing. So it's like this with law students and attorneys. They may not be in a situation, similar to the Texas attorney and myself in their personal life, but they really may not realize, and you may not realize your desirability, and the, how desirable you really are. You may exist in a, in this sort of paradigm where, you think that because you're applying to certain, types of employers in certain places, that, you're not going to, you're not desirable. And that's insane. That means, if a recruiter can't help you, that's just because the recruiter may not have enough opportunities. If if an employer in a job site's not hiring you, You know, that just may be because, you know, there could be multiple reasons. I mean, they could have already gotten plenty of applicants, or, you know, you may not be qualified enough, or who knows? I mean, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of opportunities. Most attorneys and law students, they see a very limited amount of information that's available to them, and what they can achieve. And you absolutely need to understand, like I understood when I landed in Dubai, or you know, when like I understood when you know, I saw all these attorneys that did these mailings get positions. You absolutely need to understand that there's way more opportunities out there than you can possibly ever be aware of, and there's just tons and tons of opportunities, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to find them. So one of the things I want to talk about just very briefly is the difference between legal recruiters and legal placement. And, you know, typical legal recruiting firm, like I said, is going to have only the largest law firms with openings. And these are going to be the firms that everybody has heard of. And they may have a few relationships with a few smaller firms, and they'll send you to those firms. But for the most part, they're only going to have relationships with the largest law firms. And, you know, that means that, you know, like I told you earlier, out of 2,500 law firms in a city like Los Angeles, there may only be 20 opportunities, or 30 opportunities. You know, it's just too much work to monitor all the potential openings in the market. And because of that, you know, the typical attorney using a legal recruiting firm is only going to be exposed to the largest law firms that everyone kind of knows about anyway. And if the recruiting firm doesn't have those openings, then the candidate's going to be out of luck. And that limitation is one reason that the kind of the practice of legal recruiting isn't something I like. What I like is legal placement, and that means that everybody, you know, comes to BCG, for example, will, you know, we typically have at least 6 people researching and finding opportunities, updating databases, you know, for every recruiter in the company. So, you know, there's at least 6 people at all times, you know, assigned to do research and stuff for each recruiter. So there's no reason that most people can't do that same research themselves, and you certainly can. But, you know, what I've realized over, you know, 2 decades of doing this is that, you know, that if you do research and find opportunities, you know, you're going to, you know, really uncover a lot of stuff out there, and it's going to change your career and your life. I mean, you know, because there's so much out there, you know, and, you know, you just don't want to be held back by, you know, job sites or recruiting firms, or, you know, anybody that's trying to control the amount of information, or give you the sense that there's not a lot of information out there. And this happens to so many people in the course of their job search. So I kind of got an interesting, you know, story about, you know, when I was younger, I worked for an attorney that apparently had never lost a case. That's what his secretary told me, and other people in the firm said. But he was very, you know, he didn't brag about it or anything. He was just, you know, kind of more academic than anything. And he had, you know, very famous clients, and a lot of times he would be called when they were accused of doing bad things, or something very bad happened. I mean, you know, just something that would kind of make headlines, and you know, and then the person would be sued. And so what he would do is he would get these fact patterns, and you know, and he would just start researching. And I worked with him once on one particular case for, you know, several weeks, and I was just writing all these memos and doing all these research, and I had like all these piles of like research around my office. And I mean, it was crazy, like how much research and work was going into these cases. And you know, we wouldn't just look at like what the case law said. We'd look at like, you know, the law, and like what the legislatures were debating in terms of what the law meant when they were enacting it, so we could argue that the case law was wrong, or whatever. And we interview people, and there was so much work that went into it, and there was always like a limitless budget, because this was very bad stuff. But what would happen is every time I worked on a case with this guy, something would happen where we would always find like a very small point or something in the case where that the research would uncover something where we would win, where whatever the reason that we were being sued was, there was always some angle or some sort of way of looking at it. If you did enough research and worked hard enough, you could always win cases, and that to me was incredible. Like I realized that the more work you did on something, the more the better it was as a litigator. And so when I got done working with him and I'd spent just looking at the minutiae of a case, like you just go so deep. Like most people will get a case and they'll just kind of respond reflexively with, this is the law, this is this, and that's how most attorneys practice law. But if you're like an extremely good litigator or an extremely good researcher and stuff, you will look at things in a lot of detail and you'll understand every angle of the case and everything about it. And there's a famous story of an attorney in Chicago named Phil Corboy, and he and I interviewed him when I was in law school. But what he used to do is he'd take every paper in a case, and he would have his secretary and everybody dump it in a jacuzzi in his apartment, in a water tower place, and then he would go through he would pick out every paper that was, even if it was mixed up, and he would read it, and then he would figure out where it went and make sure he understood. And the idea was he wanted to understand every case inside out. So the idea with you looking for a job is, you need to be able to do research to find places that you can work. You need to be able to, understand, that the more research you do, the better off you're going to be. And like I said earlier, I mean, small law firms are breaking off from big law firms almost every day around the United States and need people. Attorneys are joining firms every day, and those firms need to hire people to work for them. And small law firms need people without business, or medium firms do. And it's just the people are leaving firms and vacancies every day. And the market is so dynamic. Just take the idea of 4,000 law firms in New York. At 4,000 law firms in New York, every week people are leaving and getting hired and new work is coming in. So if you take about 4,000 and say 3 or 4 things, maybe say 10 things happen in the law firm every week. 10 new types of, some new work comes in, someone leaves, someone's hired. So if that is happening, say 10 things are happening at each of those 4,000 law firms, some more than others, that's 40,000 things that are happening in those 40,000 law firms every week that could impact whether or not they need people. And you have absolutely no way of understanding that. You can read all the news periodicals you want, look at all the job sites, but you're not going to understand that unless you affirmatively reach out and contact those employers. The other thing too is in recessions, work will, law firm or companies a lot of times will bring work in-house instead of giving it to law firms to save money, and maybe they'll hire people. So there's such an astonishing amount of work in the market that, it's you can find that if you have the skill, but if you don't, look for that work and you look the normal way that people look, you're not going to find it. So you have to do research, and you have to use, sources out there. Some sources would just be, BCG we list firms, but we certainly don't list every law firm. At Law Crossing, we list a lot of firms, but we certainly don't list every law firm. Martindale lists firms, but they don't list every law firm. Martindale will list the people that pay to be there, which is, fewer and fewer people. And BCG, we only list like the best law firms. In Law Crossing, we list a lot of firms, but we certainly don't list every firm there either. So you have to be, using and looking at lots and lots of resources for firms. You can find firms by, doing searches on Google. So, an example of a search would be, top litigation boutiques in, Palo Alto, if you want to work in Palo Alto, or top litigation firms in Palo Alto. Just sometimes even just Google can pull up a lot of results. FindLaw has lots of jobs. Now, after this, I'm going to be posting a list of, attorney directories, and I'm also going to be posting a list of, places where you can, bar associations and other places that will have jobs. And I'll also post a list of 4,000 job sites. I don't expect you to look at all the job sites. I don't expect you to, look at all of the bar associations except ones that are local to you. But you need to, and I'll also post a list of other associations for you as well. But you need to get out there and look at, every type of source of jobs you possibly can. And it's not just going to be places that are listed. You need to do research to find them. And, presumably, most people that go to law school, learn, to have, you get legal skills in law school. I mean, you learn to do research, and you learn to find information. And this particular type of information, if you think about, the thousands of hours you've spent in libraries and so forth doing research and looking up case law, none of that information is going to change your life. But if you learn how to do research to find law firms in different markets or companies in your market, you can, you'll find an astonishing number of places that you can work. I go to law libraries at least, once a year, and I look at all of the directories there. And sometimes it's almost like, because I love information so much, I almost get to the point where I'm like hyperventilating and need to sit down, because there's directories of in-house attorneys, there's directories of associations, there's directories of, council of patent. I mean, there's so many different types of directories and sources of information out there that for me to just list them would be, it would take, a ton of time. And there's new ones all the time. One I do like actually now is Google. I mean, you can find a lot of things on there, and they do a very good job doing that. And and I certainly have, we spend, a ton of time building our database at BCG because it's, and Law Crossing, because it's a, it's a business. But, at the same time, there's so many things out there. And, you need to know also how to, as an attorney, make a case for yourself. Now, I will be talking in subsequent, modules about how to package yourself and how to, do it. And all we've been talking about the past, several weeks is we've been talking about, how to find this information, because information really, in my opinion, is the most important thing for you in terms of looking for a job and finding the information of opportunities out there. Because once you have access to information, you can get out there and regardless of your interviewing skills and stuff, things are generally going to work out because you're going to find the right person that matches the kind of person you are, or the right kind of group. But at the same time, we will cover that other stuff. But information is the most important thing. You need to use your research skills. And, what do attorneys do? I mean, the most basic thing an attorney is taught in law school is how to write an appellate brief. An appellate brief is going and doing all the research, and then, and then you also argue the appellate brief, and then making an argument for whatever side of the case it is. That's what you need to do with yourself. That's the most basic skill. Every attorney has it, but you need to get out there and you need to research all of the firms in the given market that do what you want. I like Martindale, by the way, because of the way they break down practice areas, but I don't like the fact that, that they're also limiting the information. Martindale's only showing the people that are paying to be there, okay? And same thing with fine law, same thing with a lot of, job sites. All these people out there, you need to understand, are giving you biased information. NALP, if you lose a NALP guide, that's also people that are paying to be there. If you're interviewing only on campus, at your law school, law firms need to pay to interview on campus. I mean, all these things are limiting your information, and I don't like it. I understand business is business. Recruiters are limiting your information by only showing you jobs with other clients. Job sites are limiting your information by only showing you places that are paying to be there. Newspapers are by the same thing. So all these people, are limiting your information. So, I want you to think, just put yourself in the shoes of actually being a lawyer, and if you've gone to law school, you've been taught how to represent people and are being taught, and that's what attorneys do. I mean, you're being taught to represent people and get them results. So think about if someone came to you and you're just an attorney, but instead of being an attorney, telling them about whatever your practice area is, environmental law or something, and getting them a result, You have to get them a result in terms of the job market. You have to really show them what's out there, and you have to, you're representing them and taking them under your wing as your client. You have to get them a job. Would you send them just a few openings if you were getting paid for your job, or would you go and research every possible place they could work, every possible directory where there's information? Would you go and do all the work and the research you needed to? And the thing is you would do that research, and you would do it as an attorney because it was necessary. And you would do it because you needed to guarantee that the person was going to get a result. You would find every possible place that they could work, and you would be as thorough as possible, and you would prepare a report, and it would have all that information. And when you had all that information, the person would get a result. And that's exactly what that I do at BCG, and what we've been doing for over 20 years is we use our research skills as attorneys to get people, to identify every possible law firm, every possible place the person could work, and do, a very good job. And the only thing that was holding you back from getting the position that you want, or getting any attorney getting the position they want, is honestly, it's just not looking at more places, not putting yourself out there. Absolutely insane. Not doing more research, and not, really understanding what's out there in the market. And attorneys are making in their careers all sorts of assumptions that limit them. They believe that only large law firms pay well, so that's where they need to apply. Not true. Lots and lots of small law firms pay even better than major law firms in many cities. They get bonuses that are more. They pay people in different manners. They may pay them by the hour. I had an attorney once that was talking to a firm, and she thought the firm, by the looks of it, would pay $60,000 or $70,000 a year. It turned out she was billing, they were giving her half of whatever she billed out for, and she billed out at $500 an hour, so she was making $250 an hour. And her first year there, she worked over 2,000 hours. You honestly, you cannot take any of this stuff at face value. There's going to be opportunities in small law firms that are going to pay just as much as large law firms. Many people believe that law firms will not consider them if they apply there and there's no openings. That is also insane, okay? Because a law firm is a business. Say that just put yourself in the shoes of a law firm or an attorney running a law firm. Say you have a law firm and it's just you sitting there, and you have all these clients coming in that need you to help them get financing, because their businesses are crashing because there's a pandemic again, and so you have to go get them financing, and they're happy to pay you, $750 an hour to do it, but you simply don't have the time to do all this work. Now, if you get a letter in the mail from an attorney that says, hello, I have a lot of experience doing financing. Oh, and I'm just got laid off from this huge law firm because they don't have any work. And if I got on a resume like that, I would bring that person in a second. And I would tell them, I can't believe you're making $200,000 a year, but I'll give you, whatever, until we get this done. You might even make more. That's great. I mean, that's how it works. So you just need to understand that there's opportunities out there like that, and you need to be of the state of mind where you can find it. And that attorney that had all that work getting financing, as an example, he may not know, or she may not know how to go out and find attorneys to do the work, or have any idea. But if someone targets them and finds them by doing research of who does the kind of work I do in this city or market, and it approaches them, you're going to get a job. Many people believe that there's no opportunities in their market. Right now, the city of New York is shut down, because of the pandemic. Nothing's going on. People aren't going into work and all sorts of things. And yet, yesterday we made a placement of a litigator, and we also made a placement of a banking attorney. This is just yesterday, a BCG attorney search, and those people are working from home. And we also got a couple other interviews. This is in the middle of a market, and that's supposedly the worst it's ever been, and shut down. There are opportunities everywhere, no matter what the market is, because firms have work no matter what the market's like. And you cannot say that there's no work in your market, because There are attorneys doing work. If you drive around to the nicest neighborhoods in any city in the United States, there's going to be attorneys living there. And those attorneys have work. There's work everywhere. Okay, I just want you to make sure you understand that. And I really knocked that in. There's work everywhere. It doesn't matter. Many people believe that law firms only hire people that are more junior, more senior, or with different backgrounds. Not true. Okay, so we place attorneys that don't have any experience. We place attorneys that are senior and don't have any business all the time. Why do law firms hire attorneys that are senior without business? They hire them because they need senior people to do the work, and they have more senior people work than they can do themselves. People hire all sorts of people. It's just, you have to use your research skills though to go after and find, those positions. And, the number of assumptions that are holding most attorneys back in their job search is just nothing short of amazing. And, most careers are limited because people do not believe in what is possible. And what happens when you get out there and market themselves, correctly. And I'm really trying to emphasize this as much as I possibly can, but I want you to understand there are tens of thousands of law firms in the United States. There are, hundreds of thousands of companies, tens of thousands of government offices. There are so many possible places you can work. It's astonishing. And I'm going to go over more of those because I don't want to take in too much time, and I'll go over those in subsequent weeks. But you're holding yourself back, if you're not going out with that. And you also need to be very smart, and you need to realize how information is kind of being controlled all around you. And you need to question, why am I getting access to information in the way I am? Is this really true? And so forth. And so I started my career at a law firm called Quinn Emanuel, and I was speaking with a partner in that firm just a couple days ago, and he was telling me about something that Bill Urquhart did. And Bill Urquhart was one of the founders of the firm, and very smart, and was in charge of kind of recruiting and business development. And he said that what happened at many of the law schools that Quinn wanted to interview at each year was that the schools, would rotate, the best law schools like Harvard and so forth would rotate when the firms could interview. So, one year they could interview in September, but then the next year would be October, and the next year would be November, and then they would go back to September. And it might have been late August, September, October. I don't remember the exact months, but they were over 3 months. And so, obviously the benefit if you interview first and you interview the best students and the ones that you want the most is you can make them offers and they'll accept, and then they're out of the market. And then the people that come in later kind of get the people that are left over. So not necessarily the worst thing, but if you have access to the best attorneys, the best law students first, it's good. So for years, Quinn kind of just went along in a docile way, being controlled by when they got access to students, and just kind of doing that. And just kind of like lemmings, and the way most people, get access to information. And then it occurred to Bill Urquhart that the only students they really wanted anyway were students that had gotten on the law review, or maybe gotten some, prizes their first year, which the school would announce, for the best academic performance. And so all they need to do is just go to the, online and see who was on law review, and send letters to them at the law review office, and then maybe contact them through LinkedIn and invite them to a cocktail reception and a meeting, and and to do some interviews in a hotel. And so they would just interview them before any of the other firms even showed up on campus, make their pitch, and get the best students every year. And stop using on-campus interviews, which the schools charge thousands of dollars for, which is not a worry of Quinn, but stop doing on-campus interviews entirely, and got the best students. So using, being very smart about information, and realizing that, they weren't limited by, who the school said they could interview at what time. They could just do whatever they wanted. And, and you can do the same thing. You cannot allow others to control the access of information, your access to information. So what you need to do, and I've said this before, but if you're in the market, you need to apply to places without openings. You need to do this. You should not be controlled by the idea, that you need to apply to places that have openings. You need to do your research and, find every company, every law firm, every government office in your market that you want to work in whatever market, and apply to them. And, I've said this before, but I'll tell you again. If you're writing a company, you write to the CEO, and the resume will always make it to the CEO. And if it doesn't make it to the CEO, it will be given to, it will go to the CEO, and if the CEO doesn't look at it, it will be passed from the CEO's office to HR, and people will know it's from the CEO, and it will get looked at in a serious way. The other way you can apply is most law firms will list their HR contacts or who to send your resume to on their website. If they don't, then send it to an attorney that's the most senior attorney in your practice area that you want to work at, or one of the named founders of the firm if they're still alive. That works too. And the thing is none of these people need to post jobs online. They don't need to, have openings. People love it when people reach out to them. This is especially true with smaller law firms. I've hired people before that have just walked in my office and said they wanted to talk about a job, or have just mailed letters, just proactively mailed letters. If you apply to a law firm, also, most law firms don't receive a lot of applications. It's a funny story, but when I applied to Quinn Emanuel, the firm was only like 40 attorneys at the time. And Bill Urquhart got my application that I mailed in, and he called me on the phone and he said, "How did you know about us? How did blah, blah, blah?" And, so he was flattered that he got a letter in the mail. Now, this is before the firm exploded and turned into 1,000 attorneys. It was a long time ago when I worked there. But the point is, law firms love getting applications, especially the smaller ones that don't hear from people. And it's a big deal to them. I mean, they have an opportunity to hire someone. It gives them validity. I mean, there's all sorts of things about it, especially, when you contact them. And the best way to reach a law firm is, to send a letter through the mail. You put it on nice paper. I used to buy, heavy cotton paper and nice envelopes, so it comes and looks good. You make sure that everything's professionally formatted, and it looks very professional. And, they're going to take note of it. And the thing about, letters is when you get a letter in the mail, like when I get letters, I hardly ever get letters anymore. But if I get a letter about something that's interesting or a resume, it sits on my desk while I think about it. And so it's constantly reminding me of it, and I'm thinking about it. If you just send an email, it just goes into a folder somewhere on someone's computer, and it's often deleted. You don't know if they're going to get it. It's fun. People can walk a printed resume into another person's office. It's harder to discard. So, spending the time to send letters, I'm telling you, I mean, most people don't do this, but if you do, it's going to change, your job search quite a bit. And, it's something, you're less likely to get attention if you send your materials through other means. Sending a letter is typically the best way of doing it. And at BCG, for example, we always send letters, via, email, fax, printed letter. It's, something we always do. We, send them in different ways, and it can pay huge dividends. I mean, if someone gets a fax or a letter, it's going to make a much bigger difference than if they just get an email. And, so you should always send letters to law firms with your application material. So in conclusion, the biggest thing I want to say to everyone is, it's very important to, do whatever you can to, get in touch with as many law firms and employers as you possibly can when you're doing your search. And you need to reach out to them, in a lot of different ways, and not be controlled by information that you may be coming through other points. Now, after this, once this is posted, I'm also going to post, a list of attorney directories. I will do a talk about that, kind of a bonus talk about looking at attorney directories and so forth, that I will post before our meeting next week. And but does anybody have any questions that I can ask real quick? So the first one is, what's a good way to find out the law firms you want to mail your resume to? And that is a good question. And if you give me 1 second here, I'm going to pull something up for you. Let me see here. Hold on. Yeah. So the best way to find law firms is I'm going to send you very quickly I'll post a list of the directories that you can use, but you want to use directories. The best way of doing that is, you can use, like Martindale's a good one. Like I said earlier, you can use FindLaw, and then you can also, remember those two are paying to have their stuff posted on a law firm has to pay. And I'll give you some other attorney directories too. And so really the best way of doing it is I also like is using Google to find things, and that can work very well as well. So you do a search for law firms in your practice area and their location, and that will a lot of times turn up things that are in no directories. And so I'm very impressed with Google's ability to do that. And and that's also a good way to do it. At BCG, we list top law firms in different practice areas, so you can use that. There's another source called Chambers, which has different law firms in it's Chambers USA, I believe, in different practice areas. And then there's also US News and World Report does that. But what I would like to encourage you to do is, you want to spend more time on things like Google and more time on things like where the information is kind of free, because then you're going to get access to more things that other people aren't finding. So an example would be like there's the Vault list of firms. Vault is a great source of firms, but that's only going to show you very few firms. So you're not going to, really find as many firms as you normally would if you use paid sources. So everybody can use paid sources. Everybody knows about NALSC. For example, NALP is a good source. I mean, they have a lot of firms, but it costs a lot of money to list your firm with NALP. And so you need to find places that aren't necessarily listing in those organizations. There's also lots and lots of another way to find attorneys sometimes too is just using state bar directories. They will a lot of times break down people by practice area. I'm going to send you a list of all of the state bars, and there's local bars. There's also bars for, different practice areas, and, so you can find, things like that as well. Yeah, so that's one thing. Then the next thing, let me see. So I got that question done. What's the best way to send your resume to? Okay, and then service that can mail your resume on your behalf. Yes, there's a service called Legal Authority that can do that. That's one of our services. But at the same time, the work that Legal Authority does, you can do yourself. So you don't necessarily need to, use a service like Legal Authority, but it can help. It can do it for you. So Legal Authority is a good service for that, and that's legalauthority.com. But you can also, create the list yourself. Sometimes too, by the way, when you create your own list, it's a good thing because you may find, you can also email alumni of your law school. You can, if there's something that the firm does that you think is particularly attractive, you can mail them. You may know someone at the firm or there's all sorts of things. So the more you kind of investigate a firm, people love to get personalized application materials. So Legal Authority will send application materials for you, but they won't be that as personalized as you could do yourself. And people love doing, personalized application materials. So, if you can do personalized application materials, that's going to make a huge difference, if you're able to do that. So whatever you can do to do personalized application materials, and just, personalized means, you give reasons that you're interested in the exact firm or something along those lines. If you don't hear back when you send your application materials. What should you follow up, and what's the best way to follow up? Well, the best way to make sure the firm gets your application materials is not to email them, and also many times not to apply through the law firm or employer's online system. I mean, you certainly can, but the best way really is to to make sure you mail your stuff, because mailing gets it through. And then the other thing you can do is you can just apply again sometimes. But you don't want to be pushy with firms. A lot of times, if you're pushy, firms won't like you. And being pushy, can sometimes hurt you. And if you decide to email a resume or a cover letter, should you also send a writing sample? And the answer to that is probably not. Law firms will ask for a writing sample later if they want, and typically you want to send less because it will give an opportunity for you sometimes to potentially screw up. So you don't want to screw up by sending something that they may not like. Now, I actually don't mind sending writing samples, and I think it can be a good idea to send writing samples, but at this, because it shows a lot of enthusiasm. But at the same time, if you do, it should be something that you're 100% is very good, and that that they may not have problems with. And then there's all sorts of rules for writing sample. There's making sure that things are the formatted, not formatted correct, making sure they're formatted correctly, and that they're good, and I don't know, and you don't want to send things you worked on that may be not public, like memos. So that's a good question. I think maybe that's something that we should cover, and I like that question, and I'm thinking maybe next week I can do something for you on cover letters and writing samples. There's one other question also about, do you have a template of what a letter to a firm could say? And yes, I do. I can, what I will do, since there's a lot of questions, I think, about cover letters and that sort of thing, I can do a presentation, or some information for you about cover letters and resumes probably next week, if you'd like. I think that's a good idea. A resume, a letter does not need to say a lot. It can say, sometimes a short letter is actually gets more attention than a longer one. The idea is that, when you're young, especially, or older, a lot of people give a lot of, importance to the things that they've done. And you don't always need to go into a lot of detail. So I think I will try to talk a little bit about that for you guys next week. So if no one has any more questions, I think that's probably it. I'm sorry there were some issues with the PowerPoint when we got started. We are planning to do also a resume and cover letter workshop in the next week or so. So we'll send around the dates and times for that. And I think that would be helpful for a lot of people. And if people want as well, I'm happy personally to look at everyone's resume, and I will record, if you don't want to do it publicly, and I can record, short little, discussions about what I think you should do, to improve your resume. So after the call, we'll send out an email to everyone about, what to do with their resume. And then, if anybody, would like any personalized help with their resume and cover letter, we can also, arrange some calls for that too. So I will have some information set out about that after this meeting. And I certainly appreciate everybody being on the call and a member. And we have a lot of exciting stuff coming up in the next several weeks. But I think, this is today what we covered is very important, and I'm encouraged by the questions. Looking for places to send stuff. So that's good. Thank you.